Well, that was exciting. I just did this all once and now we're actually live. So thank you so much for joining me. Depending on where you are in the world, you may or may not be familiar, but today is Turkey Day, also known as Thanksgiving, also known as a day celebrating genocide, also known as a day celebrating family and gratitude and connection. Everybody's right. Everybody's wrong. That's what I'm going to be talking about in this live. So I have not yet said anything about the paradoxical, political, and geo-economical situations that we are finding ourselves in, but it feels a little bit hard to be alive sometimes. And I say this from the place of most privilege that pretty much anyone on this earth could say that from, acknowledged. And also, what I am finding over and over and over again is this need to name, blame, shame, condemn, and hate each other. And I don't know how we're going to get out of this if we continue on with that behavior. And I say that as someone on these platforms, as someone who is creating content and art, and as someone who has really strong opinions. I have not even known how to vocalize, let alone share, because I am not a political, nor am I a polarizing voice. I don't believe that by creating clickbait, fear mongering content, we are doing anything positive. And I'm a big believer in walk the walk. I'm a big believer in actions speak louder than words. And so it's been very challenging for me to exist on these platforms when I also recognize that anyone with an audience on a platform has a responsibility. How they want to use that responsibility is not for me to judge, but I absolutely need to get clear about that in my own self. And I've been thinking about this particular conversation that I've wanted to have. And today is actually the perfect day. I'm working. I'm not in a celebratory space or mood. That has nothing to do with anything outside of my own particular beliefs. And I recognize that this is the challenge that is being presented to all of us right now. How can we juggle the ends of the spectrum? How can we truly have the capacity to hold the both and? Because right now they are very far apart from each other. We're asking for people to be participating on social media while their content is sandwiched in between atrocities and murders. The flip side of it is most of the world has been engaging and experiencing this level of horror on a daily basis for decades, if not centuries, yet we haven't been paying any attention to it. And suddenly we're all up in arms about it. Suddenly it's a trend. These are things that I don't know how to address them, and I don't have any answers. But I think by bringing awareness to our own mirroring and mimicking of this hateful, divisive, and judgmental behavior, can we actually facilitate the change I certainly want to see? And I'm going to get a little bit more into that, share some personal stories, and hopefully you walk away from this with some ideas about what you actually can do. Because I'm assuming you're watching this because you were also tired of hearing everybody complain about things on these platforms and then use these platforms to complain about the thing they're complaining about, right? Like, this was semi inspired by somebody I dearly love and respect who created a viral post about the conflicts that are going on in this world. And the people that made that post viral were exactly who he was condemning, the quote unquote love and lighters that just jump on the bandwagon but aren't actually doing anything about it. And then they got on stories and talked about this experience and how much they hated the platform that they were using that then facilitated this viral post that is actually the only place that their business exists. And yet they got on and commented and engaged with and thanked every single one of these love and lighters who had contributed to this post going viral. So like the hypocrisy is real. And also, we're just doing our best here. We're just simply trying to recognize where we're at in any given moment and asking ourselves, can I do better? I used to spend this holiday feeding unhoused. And I would get together with the consigliere, fondly known in my circles, someone who challenges me to be the best version of myself that I can be, my partner. And we would gather food from local businesses and set up in a parking lot and just make ourselves available, make the food and the connection available to anybody who needed it. And we would often end up with a really big long line. We'd spend at least 2/3 of the day there, really just having conversations and making sure that other people felt like we were grateful for their existence. Because I mean, what else can you do, right? And I had a very weird day. And this was during a very weird year where we had been asked to not connect with other people for extensive periods of time. And I was aware that there was police across the street kind of keeping an eye on us. And we had a family show up, two parents and a young child. And they asked us if they could help. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. That would be awesome. Like, here we go. And then they started filming. And I was like, "Hey, just to be respectful, you haven't given anybody here the pieces of, like, what's it called when you give away, you sign off that people could use the image, permission. You've not asked anybody for permission. We don't have any official paperwork here, so I'm just going to ask that you not use anybody's images, anybody's faces in your video content." And they were like, "Yeah, absolutely." Clearly, they were not respecting that request whatsoever, and it became very obvious that this 7-year-old is a YouTuber, and they were positioning this person as someone who was essentially putting this event on, which is fine. I don't care. I'm not precious. But the fact that your child is being leveraged and that you're using the faces and experiences of people who've not given you permission for this, like, I did have some questions about, and I asked. And I was told that I am being a gatekeeper, that I am preventing other people from participating, that I am using this for my own marketing endeavors. And it was just like, "Okay, we're clearly a mismatch here. I'm going to have to ask you to leave," which this person then got very upset. And then one of the people that we were engaging with pulled a knife. And I was like, okay, well, this just got very weird. Then the police showed up and were like, "Hey, you guys need to leave. And in fact, this is pretty much illegal. We've just been trying to figure out which ticket to issue you if we allow you to stay." And and what was intentionally a very I mean, we were just trying to be the change, right? To do something positive, to impact one person in a way that helped them feel like they too got to celebrate a holiday. Ended up just being this really weird endeavor. And I watched some of the people get really upset. I personally just felt like we tried, and maybe this isn't the thing we're going to be doing anymore. And it would have been really easy to get into a fight with that family or to resist the police officers who were ultimately just trying to do their job. Like, every one of us could have been the villain or the hero. And really, it wasn't about that at all. Like, we're just trying to do our best. And I think that's what's happening on these platforms. And, I think you would be tone deaf to not speak out, especially, as a business owner. You're marketing, you're selling, you're building your audience, and you have to recognize, like, that messaging is getting sandwiched in between some of these horrors and atrocities. But it's also like, there's nothing you can say to make any of this right or even tolerable. So then you do what I've been doing the last few weeks or months or years, which is just like, I'm just going to be out here doing my best and making a difference in the best way that I know how. Again, we'll get into that. People are on these platforms criticizing the colonialist, patriarchal, corporate machine by using the machine. It's confusing at best, and it's contradictory at worst. And I think that it is ignorant to think that reposting is doing anything, but it's also ignorant to think that by not saying anything, you are making a difference. So why am I bringing this to the attention of myself, of to you? Why do I think it's important to just simply recognize that, like, I think this is the challenge. It is the paradox. It is exhausting and overwhelming, if not impossible, to try and hold this understanding as a mere mortal, right? Like, these are big, hard truths and experiences and realities that we're not doing a great job at solving. And I don't think we're going to get there by hating and judging and condemning and dividing. And I choose to be an optimist in the most challenging times, because I don't understand how we're going to find a solution and how we're going to get on the other side of this by thinking the worst is only going to happen. So, one of the ways I'm able to do that and to resource myself is because I've employed a handful of tactics and strategies that I'd like to share with you. Because If this makes you feel crazy, you are not alone. But if you continue to deny yourself security, safety, validation, and acknowledgement, if you continue to deny others of that, and if you stay on this divisive, judgmental, condemnation, blaming path, you will inevitably find yourself alone. And that is one of the worst things I think we as humans experience, is this sense of abandonment. And the challenge is when we're in this place of fear, of shame, of pain, and of suffering, it narrows our ability to do anything effective. So where do we start? The first is nervous system work. And that can be anything from learning to pause and take a few deep breaths to doing actual breath work. That can be getting outside and feeling the sun or wind on your skin. That can be taking a nap. It can also be a little bit more complex and resourced in terms of getting therapy, getting support, doing quote unquote nervous system work. And the Safe and Sound protocol, you can Google that, is a really great and accessible way to get this started. But it really is understanding your own nervous system regulation and empowering yourself to take yourself down when you have been shooting up and off the scales. I would say anytime you are creating something or putting something out there, knowingly dividing, polarizing, and using fear as a motivator, check yourself, please. I don't know why that would be worth the views or the sales or the virality of your content or art. And ultimately, you are essentially endorsing the problem. So do you please, and just simply bring awareness to the fact that you're doing that. I personally think as long as we are consciously choosing our actions, knowing where they're coming from, it makes all of the difference in the world. But I'd be curious if you were to do some research and really understand how to create compelling, inspirational, and like contagious content, something that people can't deny as being possible and hopeful. You might see some different results there, and I would guarantee you will see more sustainable results as well, if for no one else other than yourself. You can repost social media content. See what I did there? Again, just check yourself. Am I doing this to condemn those that see this? Am I doing this in reaction to something I've witnessed? Or am I doing this from a place of feeling good, whatever that means to you? And of course, you can be involved in your local communities. You can get out there. You can protest. If that doesn't feel accessible, you can sign petitions. You can donate. It doesn't have to be money. It can be time. It can be support. It can be your skill set. You can organize resource gathering, whether that's food or clothing or just simply connection. You can host online meetups. You can get onto these different platforms, WhatsApp, Slack. There's a ton of different Web3, DeFi, socialized platforms as well out there. Like, there are more opportunities now than ever to connect from shared value rather than to divide from hate. All you have to do is be nice to somebody today. Ask someone, how can I help you? Maybe it's a neighbor. Maybe it's somebody in your building. Maybe it's somebody online. Maybe it's somebody that you engage with in your world. Be nice to you first and to someone else second. And that will honestly change this world, because the rest of what's going on, I think we're just going to need a lot less of that. And I know that's putting it simplistically. Again, I know this is coming from a place of wild privilege. I absolutely acknowledge that. And this is me saying, I see you. I see what's going on out there, and I'm committed to doing my very best to be the change I want to see in the world. And I hope some of the resources that I've shared with you today enable you to do the same. Thank you so much for listening.